Hi, Jack. I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. A real pleasure to be able to speak to you today. I haven't had the chance to see the film yet. Hellboy, the Crooked Man. What can people expect going into this absolutely wild film?
You know what? A different take, that's for sure. It's a lot more of a grounded, kind of independent feel, I would say. Kind of what Hellboy is, I guess. He's kind of independent to the other superhero characters. The director and Mike work together. Mike Mignola, the creator of Hellboy, they work really hand in hand, intimately, in making sure this Hellboy is kind of a direct adaptation of his comic book. So a lot of it is shot for shot, snapshot for snapshot, picture for picture, directly from the comic book. So that was the blueprint for shooting this thing. And I just kind of walked in and followed directions as best as I can.
Such an iconic character, and of course, been played before by the likes of Ron Perlman and David
Mhm.
Harbour. But like you say, this is kind of a fresh take, trying to be as close as possible, I guess, to the source material. Did you go back and look at those other incarnations? Where did you begin with your Hellboy?
Well, I remember Hellboy, the first original Hellboy on film with Ron Perlman. He was incredible in it. I mean, he was perfect with Guillermo del Toro. And I actually started my acting career, my first legitimate job with Guillermo del Toro. So it's funny, all this connective tissue. That was my first introduction to Hellboy, was cinematically from the first one. And yeah, I enjoyed that one. Ours is very different. I didn't really get to see all of David Harbour's, but I like what he did as well. I thought he got beat up and beat down a little too hard, but the critics are the critics. It's tough with these films. It's a tricky one. It's definitely tricky pleasing everyone. You just got to go for it and see what comes up.
And I guess the first thing that strikes you watching it is how incredible, the transformation is. I mean, what are we talking about here? And logistically, in terms of the prosthetics, how comfortable that was. But I mean, it looks completely seamless throughout the entire film.
It's an intimate process, and it's consuming. I mean, and you get better as you go. So the beginning, they flew me out to London. I really should have remembered the special effects people's name, but it just escapes my mind. But they were incredible. He's a genius, that guy. And the team I work with, they were incredible. I mean, it was really that. I just sat there and I try to be as patient as possible. I mean, it started at about 5 hours, and then we got it down to about 4 hours. But yeah, first one there, last one to leave takes about an hour or two to take it off. And you got to be patient. You got to be a little zen.
I mean, I guess you can't also just rely on the makeup and on the costume. It's also
No.
your own physicality that you have to bring to it. And he's, such a presence as a character.
Yeah.
So it's your preparation, like, I guess, from your side in that sense.
My preparation as an actor, I work differently with each script. I'm not like these are my tools. This is how I work. I don't know if I'm going to bore you with all of that. It's just kind of a home builder approaches each kind of excavation differently depending on what the buyer wants. So my buyers were, the director and the comic book, and I had to kind of figure it out page for page. For the most part, when I see something on a script and it just bounces at me, which it did. The wisecracking, the one-liners. I got a little bit of an opportunity to improvise. It was really a guy I can relate to, despite the horns and the big rubber and a costume. Internally, I can relate to the guy on an emotional level, on an intellectual level. So it was much more wrestling with the physicality and the costume and making it feel comfortable. And is it reading? Am I reading right? Can I trust this process? Because it's not 100%. So it's a bit of a different feeling. But the process was, I took it page by page, scene by scene, and I found things that are my own. Like, he smokes, I smoke. I kind of quit right now, but I'll be back. I know myself. Where I could, I found my own little nuances and personality, right? I try to make him a little more raw and grittier and a little bit jaded, and which really what he is. He's kind of like the guy who's over his job. He just wants to take the girl to the movies, listen to the rock and roll, but it's a couple of things in the way, right? He gets a little resentful, and I wanted to come off a little bit, but I wanted to lean into the humanness, not so much all the fighting and the stunts and the and all the stuff that's already popping out on the surface. I wanted to see if I could find something that's makes him slightly younger or human.
Yeah, well, I wonder if that is part of the allure of this character when people keep coming back to
Right.
it, the contrast between this big bulking guy, how easily he can take down, his
Yeah.
opponents, and then this softness and that humor and kind of a kind heart beneath it all. So do you think that's also part of the fun of playing him?
That's the best part of playing him, right? Because obviously he does have the supernatural elements, and there's a laundry list of them that we haven't even discovered when I'm deep diving into Hellboy, and yeah, that's exciting. Obviously, the superhuman strength and all the supernatural characters that he could just kind of rumble with. But yeah, that's definitely the fun part. That's always been the fun part for me, for an actor, to find the vulnerability. Not so much tears and all that, but the human element, because I think that's what people lean into. That's what people could relate with. So that's the best part for me.
And what about the shoot itself? I mean, being in this 1950s setting, obviously in this sort of very atmospheric wood. What was that like? Were you really abandoned out there in nature for a lot of it? Was it very cold? I don't know. What were some of the highs and lows?
It was hot and it was cold, and it was everything in between, right? Sometimes because essentially it's like a quadruple scuba suit I'm wearing with some rubber and prosthetics. So when it's cold, I'm actually okay, and everyone else is trembling, and I'm like, finally, I get to kind of like a polar bear. I'm in my element now. But then when it was hot, it was like 40 degrees extra for me, and it was just sweat coming out of my eyeballs from the prosthetic, and everybody thought I was crying, and I was like, no, it's just it's the sweat stuck in my cap that I was letting out. It was a one-off experience, honestly. The woods, I love the woods. I mean, I live in the woods, so anytime I'm in the woods, I'm good. You could just leave me there, and you guys could shoo off, and I'll be fine. So I'm good in the woods. As far as the atmosphere, I love shooting in Bulgaria. I love the crew out there. They're phenomenal, man. Underpaid and work hard, and really good, really amazing at their job. I made some friends. I've worked there before, so I'd love to go back there one day and reunite with them. Everybody worked tremendously hard. I mean, obviously, we all know we didn't get the bells and whistles. We got a lower budget version of this thing, but I think we did a lot with it.
And what was the collaboration like, I guess, with Brian, but also your fellow cast? And yeah, is that hard actually when some of it's going to be there? You're obviously acting, in time with each other, and a lot of it maybe is going to be added, with the effects afterwards. How do you kind of navigate all that?
You kind of let the reins go. I got really good over the years, doing this for several years now. You learn through experience. I'm sure you do as well. Letting things go and not trying to control and fight everything. You understand that he's got a job, she's got a job, they got a job, and you let people do their job, right? And you collaborate, you test the water, you feel like who you can trust more, and you kind of lean into that person. And if you can't, you can't, and the collaboration process is exactly that for me. I'm not the VFX guy, man. I'm not the director. I'm not the writer, right? I mean, where I can help, I put my 2 cents in, and if they jump for joy over it, that's great. If not, hey, okay, best idea wins. And yeah, the cast was great. Adeline and Jefferson, we were just like, old friends, honestly. There's not much ego, just people trying to get through this and knew their job. And Brian, same thing. We were just trying to get through this film, and because it was a task. It was a great time.
And ultimately, what do you hope people will take away from watching it? And like you say, I think, there's such a fan base for this character, for those comics, and the fact that it's close to the source material is obviously going to delight people, but also the fact that it really leans into kind of like the horror genre as well. Maybe that brings like a different flavor to all of this.
I'm excited that the fact it does lean into the horror genre, because it's essentially what it is, right? It's not to steal Brian Taylor's thunder, because he's mentioned this before, but it's not a space opera. I mean, I know that sounds a little bit of mockery, but it's not this big, it's directly from the comic book. It's a grounded, kind of gritty story, right? A folklore story of him just kind of investigating what is going on here as he stumbles upon stuff. And I don't know, I personally like stuff like that. I don't like the big bombastic cars flying over the moon and like stuff that you can't really, you're like, come on now, this is bullshit, I like stuff that you're like, this can happen in my backyard. You kind of on the edge of your seat, something a little more relatable, a little more grounded. I'd love to see more versions of that personally. So I think people will maybe enjoy that.
In terms of some of these really striking visuals, these amazing scenes, when you watch it back now, do you have a favorite or one that you're most excited for fans to see?
I do have a favorite, but I don't know if I want to like kind of give it away. I don't know who's seen it, who's not. A lot of the stuff that takes place with in what is essentially the Appalachian Mountains.
Obviously, you're no stranger to doing these sorts of roles. How have you found this experience in comparison to other things you've done? And what have you got next? And also what's left on your bucket list?
I mean, obviously, this is very different from anything. Like when Hellboy comes across an actor's desk, I've been asked that question, like, well, why did you just say yes? Because you'll never get that opportunity again. You won't be, I don't think there's any leading man guy roles that's in full prosthetic. I mean, you get the one-off character like in all these kind of fantasy films, but not a guy who's leading the thing, who works every day. And very little VFX. It was really hands-on. So it's just a once in a lifetime experience, iconic character. So you just say, sign me up. I'm grateful. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's very different. I mean, obviously, I like the crime dramas and the dramas, and that's the usual stuff that I get. But I like it all, really. You know, I don't really discriminate when it comes to cinema. I mean, I'm a guy who's seen it all. Movies from Kim Ki-doo in Korea to Kieslowski in Poland to like obscure films to big blockbuster movies. And I guess what I have next is I've got a movie coming out through Amazon with Eddie Murphy, which is a comedy. I didn't expect to be in that, but I just roll with it, right? And I've got another movie I'm about to shoot in a couple of weeks. I just whatever shows up, and we'll see what happens, kind of thing, you know.
What was it like with Eddie Murphy?
Eddie Murphy, it was just strictly business, you know, very professional. You know, that's pretty much it.
Amazing. Well, pretty a veteran of the screen, let's say.
Yep,
So
yep.
not bad to share a set with him. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that with me. I can't wait for someone else to get stuck into this new reboot of Hellboy. Thanks a lot.